This is the Mind Body Detox podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox podcast. I'm your host, holistic medium Kara Lovehart, and this is a topic that I think is a little bit maybe even closer near and dear to my heart than it probably should be. So burnout, we're going to talk about overcoming burnout. So for those of you who hear me chat about on my channels about the last 6 years running a business, having a child on the spectrum, working and managing 4 social media inboxes, a holistic expo, a holistic clinic, and of course, all the other things, and knowing the whole entire time that it is not good and it's leading to burnout. But what other choice do you have when COVID hits? Right? This is a topic that life has created circumstances in people's lives where burnout is something that is now a household term. And we are needing tools, we're needing solutions, not only understand it, to understand how it affects us on our journey, what stages we might be in burnout, and of course, what are the things we can do to not only prevent, but also recover. So I'm very excited to introduce you today to Lucy Oliver, our guest. And Lucy Oliver is the founder of Re-Precision Health. She has a master's in chemistry, and she has spent the past 15 years researching the brain and the body. Now, Re-Precision Health runs 5, 10, and 21-day programs focused on the nervous system and regulation, which we talk about a lot on this show, right? Nervous system regulation in Mexico and Portugal. So she's joining us today from Portugal. They're getting ready for another big event. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Lucy Oliver.
Hi, Kara. Thanks so much for having me here. It's lovely to chat.
So tell us a little bit about your background and really what brought you to start your background in chemistry and holistic health, and what part of that journey started Re-Precision Health.
Yeah, when I studied chemistry, I definitely had no definite direction in going towards nervous system regulation or health or any of what I currently do today. But fortunately, it did come in helpful. And yeah, I think like a lot of people who fall into the wellness space, I went through a lot of health issues myself, physical and mental health issues. And after a lot of research, going down all sorts of rabbit holes, really trying to understand the body, the brain, all the different systems, how they interconnect, I really resonated with the nervous system and came to the realization that mine had been severely dysregulated for probably most, or if not all, of my life. And it was causing all of these downstream effects and symptoms that seemed incredibly mysterious. And the medical model in England, where I grew up, just couldn't quite describe what was happening or explain it or give me any good solution. I think I probably came out worse than when I went in to all the various specialists. And so, yeah, it just became a passion project to share the information and the tools that have been very helpful for me. And that background in science was definitely good for diving into all of the scientific research. And fortunately now, a lot of the themes of nervous system regulation are becoming much more mainstream, which is incredible. Back then, I had to dig pretty deep. I didn't even know what the nervous system did. And we still get guests who come on our programs that they still don't know why it's important. And so it's really incredibly helpful for them to just better understand themselves and how they operate.
It is so beautiful, the journey of going through your own health issues, mental, physical, emotional, and then working through it. And most of the guests and the people who are really doing amazing things in the world are, having to do this first dive or research and really working out this, I would say, the birth to the new system of our health, in our wellness, in our world, that we need new systems and we need pioneers and innovators and people who have gone and done. And then we need, of course, the backup, the proof, okay, we got this. Now we need to study it now, so that the science model will accept it. But it is, we're pioneers in this journey. And it's a lot more to have gone on the journey yourself and walked it and known not only the mental, emotional, the grit, the ups and downs of the journey, the reality of it. And that's really what I say is someone that's an activated healer in the world, because you've done the healing work yourself, and you are now sharing it with the world.
For sure, it's like a self-actualization process, I guess. But yeah, I actually didn't even imagine how helpful that information could be. So yeah, it's definitely a motivator to keep doing this work.
Yeah. Well, you shared a little bit about your mental health struggles with this, the challenges. And as far as your own transformation, anything that you want to share about that, or how this process influenced the way you are implementing and supporting others with your own journey?
Yeah, I think it was just a pretty slippery slope into the mental health issues. I mean, for me, it definitely started off with very much physical symptoms. For me, it was digestion was a huge issue. I was hospitalized as a kid for severe digestive pain. Got put in the IBS question mark box and was just told that was it, which I think is a pretty common scenario for a lot of people. And over time, just feeling more and more out of control of the symptoms. And, it then went into really bad hormonal issues, definitely being in that teenage phase where feeling self-conscious is just already off the charts. And to, have more things to feel self-conscious about, it for me created more of a need to control, and that felt like into an eating disorder. And then just, I think, general neuroticism of just trying to figure it out. It's just incredibly frustrating. And I'm sure many of the listeners have been
Yeah.
in the situation where they just know there's something wrong and there's not really being acknowledged. And there's just no solution. You're just told, well, that's just how it is. And fortunately, I was sufficiently stubborn to reject the diagnosis that I was given, some of which were pretty drastic, and really look for a solution. But yeah, I think nervous system regulation is fundamental to physical and mental well-being. I don't think it's the panacea that fixes absolutely everything. There's still many other factors that are involved, especially in our environment, and many things that are outside of our control. But I think nervous system regulation does give us some agency to be able to at least control our internal environment, how we perceive the stresses in our lives, how we can continually send signals of safety to help regulate the nervous system, and just get more in touch with the kind of the somatic part of our existence, whereas we tend to be so stuck in the mental, which was a huge issue for me. I mean, I'm sure that
Yeah.
there's plenty of overthinkers on here that are able to analyze everything, rationalize everything, research everything. I've always got the stack of books, but actually being able to just feel and process that, and to
Yeah.
just get much more in touch with the body is kind of like learning a new language and just trying to understand it. And that's definitely
Yeah.
something, like you said, is necessary in this next version of medicine. Our medicine is incredible for saving lives and in really acute
Mhm.
situations, but we do just seem to be falling short for anything chronic, mental health related. But the paradigm really is shifting. There's so much, well, hopefully all good information. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but there's definitely a lot more good information in the mainstream of just helping people to take a bit more control of their health and kind of be the CEO of their health, physical and mental.
We don't really understand how we work. And because we're such a mental population, it is sort of supported in our culture to be mental and to try to think our way out of things, which is part of the process, like researching and trying to say, I'm stubborn, I'm not going to take these diagnoses, I'm going to go and take matters into my own hands, which I think that self responsibility, that self inquiry, it really does help that empowerment piece, which is really a lot of times that cycle of disempowerment, of feeling not in control, really perpetuates nervous system issues and anxiety. And we're actually reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown for our book club right now in our online community. And it's a great book. And I love this one part of the book. She's talking about how when you have nervous system issues, there is more of this need to control. There's a lot of hypervigilance. There is sometimes this perpetuation of that. And I love this quote. She was actually quoting Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm going to paraphrase it. I may not have it exactly, but she said, you don't want to let go of control and surrender. You don't want to let go and surrender because you want to be in control. but you never had control in the first place. You only had anxiety. I was like, that's it. That is it. That is so it. So for those people, what I think when I notice when people have a lot of issues with their nervous system, because most of my journey as a professional is working with people with their nervous system. As a highly sensitive, intuitive individual, most of my work is the extension of the nervous system, feeling into the space, feeling into people, feeling into the consciousness of others, the emotion of others, and helping them understand what they haven't connected within themselves, because they're so outwardly focused, not inwardly focused. They don't even know what's going on. And so helping them to redirect in that way, I noticed that a lot of individuals have such of this lack of awareness of their nervous system that they don't even know that they have stress or anxiety. They're like, I'm not stressed. What are you talking about? It's really hard too, because then if there is this realization, oh my gosh, there tends to be shame around it, like, oh my gosh, I should have known. And this whole story goes and just perpetuates. But could you share with us a little bit about the signs that our nervous system is starting to get too overstimulated, or even too downregulated? What are these symptoms that people or you normally see in working with your clientele?
Yeah, you make such a good point there. It's just like when something becomes a baseline of like the normal, it can feel so strange to not be in that, even though that normal isn't helpful or healthy. And I know for sure I can raise my hand and say I was addicted to stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. And so it can feel really good. It can feel amazing when you're like pumped full of adrenaline. You're like, okay, I got all these things to do and I can get them all done. And then really, really strange to not be in that situation. And if that, I mean, the realization I came to was that I'd just been in that situation my whole life. Just that was the environment I grew up in. And so having a high amount of stress hormones felt really normal. So it feels really strange to not have that and not safe. And that's a really big theme of the nervous system is safety and familiarity and the nervous system's ability to predict what's coming next. And so, yeah, for certain signs, I mean, obviously they present differently in everybody, but common cues are things like digestive issues. So it's something that I definitely dealt with to a pretty high degree. And it can really just start out with, some digestive discomfort, bloating. There's other factors that can affect digestion, but when we're in that sympathetic state, which is the activation response to any kind of threat, the fight, flight, flee, fawn response, then it's basically priming us to be able to respond to a threat, and digestion is not important at that moment in time. So we tend to see a reduction in digestive juices. It's slowed gut motility. So that's how we can often see bloating, because the food's sitting in the gut longer and fermenting. And that's a common sign. Kind of that brain fog when we're starting to feel overwhelmed. I'm sure you've all felt it, where you just feel like you just can't quite like hold in that reactivity, because it's almost like your just brain is full. And it's because when we're in that sympathetic dominant state, we're working a lot more from the survival part of the brain, the more primal part of the brain, and we lose some of our executive function. So it can be a lot harder to kind of take that pause and be like, okay, let me just like process this and respond. We react instead of respond. And so I think we've all felt it when we've like snapped, or like you just can't kind of take it. And I mean, again, this could happen if you're just sort of hungry or like very overtired. But if this is just something that's coming up more consistently, it can be a sign that, okay, we're just not really getting into that full recovery state, the parasympathetic nervous system state, and you're staying in that activated response. Muscle tension is a big one. So across the top of the shoulders, like the upper back, in the calves, that's your body bracing and priming itself for action, whether it needs to fight or run. And so we'll see a lot of tension, often tension in the jaw too. That's a big one. And I mean, amongst many other things, hormonal imbalance is often a bit more downstream from that, because if we are in that activation response, we are producing more adrenaline and cortisol. So that's why it can feel quite good for a while. But those stress hormones are stealing the raw materials that are needed to make other sex hormones. And also, if we're in this constant state of threat, it isn't a great time to reproduce. So the body's going to conserve energy where it can, because it is just predicting that it's going to have to use resources to activate against some kind of threat. And so often we'll see hormonal imbalance, and I mean that it will be different for men and women. I do feel like women are more sensitive to it, and their monthly cycle do give some like clues. You can look into certain symptoms and what's happening there, and there's many others. I mean, obviously, like a high level of fatigue, and there's a kind of a spectrum. So, like I said, it can sometimes feel quite good at the beginning because there are enough reserves for producing that cortisol and adrenaline. Then we get into like, okay, this has been going on for quite a while, and these symptoms start to present. And then we can get into what polyvagal theory calls a dorsal vagal shutdown. So that's just when the sympathetic branch of the nervous system has been activated so long, there aren't really enough resources to keep that response going, and it's just almost like a freeze response. So that can just feel like complete and like being completely lethargic, not having the motivation to do, being hungry but barely being able to go and make some food, really low motivation, and just really struggling to get quite basic tasks done, kind of that zoned out daydreaming. And so, yeah, again, many different symptoms, but they're some of the most common ones that we see.
I just find it a reminder, when we are trying to fight our bodies because our culture wants us to push, or it's normal to push. And that when we're like, oh my gosh, or maybe I'm burned out, and the fear of that or the thought of that can be like, oh my gosh. And I feel like I think our body is so incredible. The reminder of what it is always doing to actually help trying to create equilibrium, but we don't have the capacity or the language to listen to it. So most of our work here in Pennsylvania is working with the nervous system and helping people understand it. But for massage, that is one of the first things that when people either come to a yoga class, because I teach Kundalini, which is all about the nervous system, or if they are coming for massage or some sort of therapeutic aspect, it's very apparent to us that we kind of help people say, if you are still having a hard time getting off the hamster wheel mentally during that spot of these breath work, this work with the body, it can help down regulate. But if they're really still challenged, it helps helps them and helps us understand where on this spectrum you're talking about they are. And it could be different from day to day depending on what's going on. But I think that that's one thing. If you are someone that cannot shut your mind down in, situations or circumstances where you're getting these supports for relaxation response, I think that is a cue too. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think often, especially when we're like feeling good on the adrenaline and cortisol, like the stress hormones, when we actually go to rest, we can feel so much more exhausted. It's kind of like that, what happens when people go on vacation and sometimes they'll get sick. And it's just their body just really trying to like recover a lot of their resources because they finally slowed down. And the adrenaline was giving this like temporary boost to the immune system. And so, yeah, I think some people get stuck in that, well, I just have to keep going. I just have to keep going. And it's very much somewhat of a coping mechanism, right? I mean, that's where a lot of nervous system dysregulation comes from, is just how we are perceiving the world and how we feel we have to respond to it. And most of that is programmed in our very early years. It can change if there's big events in our adult life, but most of it's coming from our early years when our nervous system is myelinated, and that's like these super fast highways of information. And so that can feel so default that it's very hard to see outside of it, because it's almost like, well, if I don't exist in this way, how would I exist? Like there's no other paradigm that you can actually relate to until over time that neural circuitry shifts. And so I think really building awareness of, well, where are these patterns coming from? And, when you do see these, this repetition and behavior and habits and things that maybe aren't particularly helpful or just are not leading to this like life we want to live, it's a really good time to be able to assess where, is this because I'm people pleasing because I had to do that to be able to stay safe? Is this because I feel like I have to be productive all of the time, which is really common because we've been kind of groomed in that way, typically in the Western world, of productivity and achievement and success, and is X, Y, and Z, which don't necessarily correlate to restoring our nervous systems to their optimal state. So yeah, it can feel very counterintuitive, which again, going back to safety, that can feel unsafe. It's like, well, I'm not going to, this isn't really fitting into my picture of what safety is. And so really that can be just a case of like easing into it, and really again, the nervous system likes to predict what it's going to need in a given situation, something called neuroception. So being able to retrain that, it is almost like an exposure therapy where we have to program it to be like, actually, everything's okay. I'm saying this to myself too, because I still catch myself in these loops. And like, actually, everything's okay if you just like don't do all these things today. And obviously that is different for every person. Circumstances are going to dictate. When you have children, there's like a certain amount of things you have to do. When you have a high pressure job, there's a certain number of things that need to be done. But how can we exist within that and still get at least get some time in that parasympathetic recovery state and keep that balance?
I definitely feel that that's been part of the journey that's been challenging. So my clinic we've been open since 2013, and we grew organically very quickly. I was going to school to be a chiropractor and just, doing massage therapy along the way so I could get my hands on people legally in the meantime. And then it grew organically, life pivoted, and then we hired employees, and it went in this space where it was going great. And then COVID hit, and then I had, the choice to continue to keep this place who's making a huge difference in our area open, or let it go. And I chose to keep it open, and I took on the jobs of 4 administrative staff because I'm thinking it would be, maybe 6 months to a year. And so my journey, understanding, especially as an intuitive, I knew that the importance of the nervous system and regulation, because that's how, in general, having so much dysregulation growing up, being disassociated from the body, that's part of the reason why I can tune into people. Because you just disassociate from the self. There's a high correlation to our listeners and people that connect that are having nervous system issues, and then they're saying, hey, I'm having empathic sensitivities, or I'm feeling like my intuitions. It's part of the process, but it's a dysregulated way, almost a trauma-based entry point into a spiritual type of experience. So it's really interesting what you're sharing about, the journey of safety has been the key word of how to reprogram my nervous system. And I love that you shared that. And also the addiction and to the nervous system's response of the cortisol, like this is how it is normally. Now wait, when there is like stillness, this is, like you said, like the exposure therapy, I've had to allow my nervous system to feel okay with not having those high amounts of chemicals running through me. And it's been really challenging, but amazing. Just the experience of being able to surrender into a space where there's no pressure after years or a lifetime is why I think that the work you're doing is incredible, and helping people to touch that is just, it can completely transform anything. So, burnout in general, if we can kind of shift into that, because that's something that is significant in today's workforce. And like I shared my journey, I'm not the only one. That there were a lot of administrators in these positions and nurses and people on the front lines, and people in general, parents that didn't have children in school. So in today's workforce, what are some of the early signs of burnout that people will often overlook?
Yeah, I think there's quite a similar crossover to the symptoms I just shared. I think what happens is there's just almost a dissociation from it. I mean, we get a lot of guests coming down. We've had like lawyers who've never taken a vacation for 10 years, because they're just so focused on the achievement piece and what's expected of them. So I think a lot of professional employees in their jobs, they are aware that something's going wrong. It's more the kind of cultural piece of the company that's maybe pushing them down that road, because a lot of, especially corporate, tends to be quite competitive. You have to really put your hours in to be able to work your way up, and it's just all designed in a way that people are almost sacrificing their needs to be able to keep working their way up this ladder. And so we do get a lot of corporate and burnout professionals, and usually they're doing fine, they're pushing more, and then it just stops. And it's clearly where the body has just used up all of its resources in getting to that point, and there's just no more. And so the signs are always there. It's just very easy to ignore them, to the point I think we often are trained to ignore them. And so again, it's getting out of the mind. I mean, a corporate job could be any more in your mind. I mean, literally, that is the tool, is to work with your mind and just kind of ignore your body all of the time. And so, yeah, I mean, what I think really will help with the shift, rather than, I mean, obviously it's really important for each individual to be able to understand those cues and do something about it, but in their given work situation they might not be able to. And so this is where it really is a cultural piece. And I mean, there's just so much evidence to show that cultivating obviously healthier employees is going to actually lead to much better results. That's physically and mentally. If they're completely burnt out, they're losing executive function in their brain anyway, so we're not getting good results. And even just for the entrepreneur, the solopreneur working at home, there's probably like realistically 4 hours in the day when you can actually do really productive, good quality work, because it's just a limit. We're not robots. And so being very aware of that, but then also just the power of like the leadership piece and leading by example. And also you mentioned like being an empath and that co-regulation piece, where I don't think a lot of leaders have got to their position necessarily because of their skills with humans. Usually it's because of technical skill. And so there's a lot of focus on the technical skill. But I mean, there's incredible studies out there just showing how impactful it can be actually when the leader is very aware of how their nervous system state, maybe not actually presented as nervous system state, but their manner of being, how that then impacts the rest of the team. There's great studies on psychological safety, and if the leaders in the workplace are in a much more kind of survival mode, they're going to be micromanaging, they're going to be reactive, they're going to be making impulsive decisions. Just none of these things are good for good work, and it doesn't lead to a good work environment. And I mean, I've also run a company and I do my best to walk the talk, but obviously there's times when things happen and you just have to go and meet the deadlines and make things, there's people's salaries on the line, so you just have to make it work no matter what. But it's always trying to balance that with a recovery period, and then to as much as possible being able to actually not necessarily just be completely contagious with your stress, right? Everything's like falling apart, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's something that I'm still working on, but try to do my best to be very aware of my state. And obviously we do our programs. When I walk in on site, everybody can pick up on that state, and it's so contagious. And I think, and we've all felt it when somebody walks in a room and they're horribly stressed or angry or upset, and it's like, oh, I can feel it. And then the exact reverse is true when somebody is feeling upbeat, optimistic, really content and joyous. It's also contagious. And so not that we can be in those states 100% of the time, but I think it's a great way to just cultivate and start to create more awareness around how our states affect others, and then really listening into our cues. If every day we're just getting these signs, and the body's always going to send signs. And if language is a great one. Dr. Aaron, who's an incredible chiropractor on our program, he uses the example of language when we're saying, oh, I have to, I need to, I have to go do this thing. Oh, I need to do this thing, instead of like, I want and love to. Just these little clues. If you're getting into that phase, I mean, I noticed it in myself with a company. I kind of accidentally started a company. I wanted to share these tools, but it does involve running a business. And there's certain areas where I'm like, oh, I have to do this. And so over time, I've like tried to, I don't particularly want to deal with accounts. I don't particularly want to deal with like this legal stuff. But over time, trying to find a way to, okay, well, maybe that bit can be delegated, so I can keep focusing on this part. Or, in the job, it's not always possible, but maybe there's something else that can offset. And so we're just not always in this like productivity duty and kind of stuck in this mindset of, well, this is just hard. Life is just hard. It's like a very, I guess you could call it like a limiting belief. And it's something for sure that I know I was dealing with, where I seemed to make everything harder than it needed to be. But it was in my mind, I'd kind of been programmed, well, it's just hard, school's hard, finding a job's hard, the actual job will be hard, all of these tasks are hard. And so how much can we start reprogramming that and starting to find like a bit more joy and ease and peace within it? So, I mean, these things are easier said than done, but I think it's really just the first step is to look at those clues, whether it's signs from the body that, oh, my muscles are so tight, my digestion's off, I'm not sleeping well, I'm kind of dreading. There's like a sense of dread going into this place, or there's very specific parts of the role that are creating like a pretty like visceral reaction in me, and over time seeing how we can start to switch that dynamic.
The working with entrepreneurs and those who are in that space of influencing a team, it is like I always say that a business is a reflection of those who are managing or running it. It really is. And that it doesn't ever make sense to me in a global market where everyone wants to compete. If you're really going to compete, you need to have a strong team culture. And that strong team culture starts with someone who's able to regulate themselves, who's able to stay in executive functioning. And that only can happen when you're down regulated. That's when you get innovative, creative ideas. That higher part of the brain's not even on when you're stressed. And so it doesn't ever make sense to me. But it's just because there's lack of education. This is a global thing that, there's multiple beautiful people like yourself who are doing this education piece and starting to help people live in a different way. And if you can work with the leaders, work with the entrepreneurs, and work with the organizations where they can see a difference in the innovation or their team culture, and especially now with the staying power, having the ability to support a team in helping them manage, because that's one of the biggest challenges for me being a leader is I am here to hold space, not hold hands. And doing my own nervous system work, doing my own, as a high achiever kind of personality, I am loving making sure that I can regulate myself. It feels that's the true power. It's not power over all these things and pushing through. It's like I can recenter myself with practice. I'm not always perfect at it, but when you can do that, it gives you so much power to influence each other or others for the better. And the more the challenge is, if you're working in a team there's not an awareness, there's not an education, and even deep understanding of why that's important, you will always be the person then holding space for your team as they are continually dysregulated and they're fearful, or safety is an issue. And when safety is an issue in organizations, then they're more likely to leave because something else looks better. The grass is greener. They're, that fight mode, the flight mode, I'm going to go over here now. And so I feel like it's so funny. Like we work with holistic practitioners, and a lot of people who are holistic healers or practitioners, there's a psychology to you enter into this profession a lot of times because you want to heal yourself. There's something within yourself that wants to be healed. And then you are working with people who have regulated nervous system issues. So I'd love to kind of move into, if you're working with an entrepreneur or someone who's burned out, or even their whole team, how does the reprecision health work? Like, what is the process for working with you guys in your retreat spaces? Because there's a lot of different cool tools I know for working with this. So I'm just curious what that looks like and what the outcomes are for people you're working with.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So we really wanted to take a 360-degree view of health. I think a lot of practices and retreats and programs, they often focus maybe more on the physical, more on the mental. We really wanted to encompass physical, mental, emotional, nutritional, and then this more like existential piece of how we exist in the world, and combine it in one place and really connect the dots. I think the nervous system piece in itself helps to connect a lot of dots, but we wanted to connect the dots between those different fields. And so the programs are based on neuroscience, psychology, functional medicine. We have an amazing team of scientists, we've got chiropractor, functional health coach, therapists, and we So we have a lot of modalities. We don't just sort of like throw them randomly at our guests. They really do work in a flow and synergistically. And really, there's three main phases where, first of all, we're just working to unwind that stress response. So most people who find us, they are dealing with some level of burnout, or struggling with stress management, or have these symptoms that they're not really making progress with in any other way. So we want to be able to unwind that stress response, get out of the sympathetic state, at least a chronically activated sympathetic state. It's always good to have some. I just want to emphasize that, because obviously we're not trying to just have a completely peaceful nervous system. We still need action, we still need movement, but we want it to be more balanced and be able to get into that recovery state too. So yeah, most people have been running in that sort of high gear of the sympathetic nervous system for quite a long time. And so we have different tools to help unwind from that. And then we get into more of like an activation piece. So how do we start reprogramming a bit of that neural circuitry, so that it's really going towards more of the life we want to create and the habits and behaviors we want to embody. And then a kind of more expansion and integrative phase. So like deeper understanding and like putting all of the bits together. And so there's many modalities that fit into there. We combine education with more immersive experiences to really put the learning into action. I don't think there's any lack of information. If people can go, the internet's incredible. You can find anything you want, and from the top universities and all of this research, there's no lack of information. But what can be more challenging is making it relevant to yourself and actually putting it into action, and then really kind of instigating more consistency, so that those neural connections are reprogramming and it's becoming more of a default habit. So yeah, we do a kind of overview of the nervous system, why it's important, the two branches, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic. Some of the unwinding exercises include TRE, it's like tension trauma release exercises. We also do call it sympathetic dominance unwinding. So some of those points that get really tense from that chronic stress state, how we can start to unwind those. In the background, we have an anti-inflammatory diet throughout the whole retreat, which is always a big hit with guests. It's like one of their favorite parts. As we get into and we also have a massage, as you know, all of the benefits, infrared, photobiomodulation, which is a fancy word for the red light therapy. And we go more into the activation using ice bath and temescal. So temescal is like a traditional sweat lodge. Ice baths are everywhere and they have incredible physiological benefits. We do use it in a bit of a different way. And our goal with our ice bath is to actually really feel, get more in touch with the body and focus more on neuroception, which is the body's ability to predict safety or detect safety and danger in a given situation. So often it's neuroception that leads some of our responses to kind of have like a mismatch between our rational mind and then what's going on in our nervous system. And again, it comes from that programming. So how can we really get in touch with that and with that process, and then also learn to regulate the nervous system in an uncomfortable environment, but also in a really safe and supportive environment. And we also have movement classes every day, quite specific types of movement, functional movement, resistance training, mobility, movement for neuroperformance. So really connecting the hemispheres. We put a big focus on the mitochondria. So they are producing, the energy currency of our body. So the better they're working, the more energy we're going to have, the more we're able to actually be restored, and we get the opportunity to rest and recover. So it's a big focus on the mitochondria. We also do a gut healing protocol. So there's just such a big connection between the gut and the brain. Fortunately, this is becoming more common knowledge. I think the gut biome is absolutely fascinating. So we do our own protocol of helping to get rid of the pathogenic bacteria and parasites, helping to heal the gut lining, which tends to become damaged or more permeable when we're under chronic periods of stress, along with other things, and then helping to repopulate with good bacteria using prebiotics and other good stuff. And in addition, we have an opportunity to actually really process the emotions that come up. Often these emotions that have just been kind of put in a box and stored for many years. I would say one of the biggest takeaways for our guests is, oh, actually, so many of these behaviors are just coming from a repressed emotional issue that's just never been dealt with, or just completely compartmentalized. And it's really fascinating. We get a good balance of men and women coming on our programs, which is awesome because retreats tend to be more female dominant. And I must say the men usually have the biggest transformations out of anybody. Most of like really potent stories I can think of are from men. And I think it's because they generally, they're even better at compartmentalizing these things. And so being able to bring that to the surface and not feel shame or around being vulnerable and having that opportunity to be vulnerable is really powerful. And also having the support of a group. And I think a lot of these words would make some people cringe. And it's so funny because most people don't want to, express emotion or be in a group. We definitely don't do it in this sort of like, holding hands kumbaya way, but I think that puts people off, and is usually the biggest, most impactful part of the program is that co-regulation
They don't
piece.
realize
Yeah.
the brain.
Yeah.
The brain is, we are animals. I tell people all the time, there's so much of the people going on their own hermit healing journey, their internal, I'm going to do this by myself, I'm going to figure it out. And then you are still, like you said, you're if you're able to co-regulate by watching someone else, looking in someone's eyes, feeling a connection that we're human, you're safe too. There's a tribal space that's very deep within our primal being. And if you don't have a sense of connection, you're going to be trying to do all all the regulation techniques, and they will work to a degree, but that is the most foundational, hands down in my experience. So I love to hear that that's what you're also seeing.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the challenging parts is humans can be one of the best things and the worst things for the nervous system, right? I mean, anybody who's experienced any kind of trauma often will have that hyper independence because it's very hard to trust. And again, it's that neuroception gauging, no, this is dangerous. Actually, we'll just isolate over here and figure it out ourselves. And so being able to, again, in a very safe, supportive environment, retrain that instinct is really, really powerful. And also it's a group of people coming together wanting to understand themselves better and wanting to embark on this work. So there's just what I love is that we do get a lot of people from many different backgrounds, ages, everything, and there's just this common humanity piece where no matter what we're going through, what we look like we're going through on the outside, there's actually usually very similar things happening underneath. And so it's just being able to feel seen and understood, to have the opportunity for these things to come up, acknowledge them and process them. It's just not something that we really get to do in everyday life. I always say in our welcome, like, when we're, a lot of our interactions are kind of like, hi, how are you? I'm fine. Cool. I'm fine is like one of the biggest lies told out there. It's not as deep as we go. So I'm fine. I'm good. And we don't often get an opportunity to go much deeper than that. And yeah, deep connection. It's just incredibly healing. And so it's why the program was designed the way it was designed, was to have that opportunity where we all go through this process together. And there's difficult things we all, we do it together to be able to overcome it and support each other and come out the other side. But yeah, there's many other modalities mixed in there, but it all kind of works in with that flow. And I mean, really, we're just giving our guests the opportunity and the space and some of the tools just to tap back into themselves, like to actually, they're doing the work. They're doing the work to be able to really change the neural circuitry towards something that they want to create. And yeah, the results have been actually, they far exceeded my expectations. When I started these programs, it was just to be able to provide the information, and I felt like it's just important things to share. And the reason we've kept going all these years is because, and it has been hard, running a business is always hard. And just being able to keep going, the motivation was seeing the results of the guests. And it's just been really beautiful. And I mean, they've just got some incredible stories and reviews. And I'm still in touch with even the participants from the very first program. And it's just so cool to see how their lives have changed post-program, and what they've really embodied and taken into their everyday life. And so yeah, really, it's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's what's keep the motivation
Yeah,
to see that then how much that impact. You have no idea the far reaches of that
right.
impact of one
The
person.
ripple.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd love to know, I'm kind of curious, is your program something that you work with everyone before they all meet together? Or it's just you meet for, in person for the journey with this group? How does that work?
Yeah, we'll meet in person on the start date and we go from there. Everybody's on the same level. And yeah,
Cool.
so we go through that process and then there's opportunities to stay in touch post program. And it's great to see that our guests meet up in person afterwards. And I've met up with quite a few of our guests post program too, which is really awesome.
And you're in Mexico and Portugal for these journeys, for these transformational journeys as a group. And I'm curious as far as how long is it? When does your next one start?
Yeah, our home base is technically in Mexico, on the west coast of Mexico, an hour north of Puerto Vallarta. Beautiful location. I mean, it's paradise. It's right on the ocean. Beautiful ocean view, just incredible property. And we run all year round in Mexico. So the next program actually starts tomorrow in Mexico. It is sold out, so there's no space. Yeah, they're usually sold out. And so yeah, there's a continuous stream of programs there. We run 5 10-day, and then we have some 21-day programs sprinkled in. Obviously, the longer program generally leads to much bigger transformations, but 5 days is definitely better than no days. We've seen like really cool transformations come out of just 5 days. I was even skeptical of the 5 days at the beginning, but it's been cool to see. And we have an event starting on the 19th of September in Portugal. So that's one of our bigger events. We'll actually have up to 50 guests, whereas in Mexico we have smaller group sizes, around 15 people. But the 50 people is it's a cool opportunity because it's so much energy. When we were talking about co-regulation, bringing that many people together that are just really enthusiastic about these tools and just want to create more in their lives, it's quite euphoric. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, as far as your journey goes with working in this industry, what do you hope for the future of burnout recovery and spaces like this? What do you see happening? What is the emerging trends, or what are you hoping to see?
Yeah, I think the awareness piece is just so important. Like a lot of these tools can be incorporated into typical medical practices. I think it's hard when you've got a 10-minute visit to be able to go very deep, but at least being able to provide some of the resources. So, I mean, some of the things we provide on site, like QEG brain mapping, neurofeedback, that like it's expensive equipment, it's a bit more complicated to deliver. But there's other pieces that are just very much educational, just highlighting, like we were saying, how the operating system works, what can be done to reprogram it. And really, a lot of it is just that awareness, change in perception, and consistency. Like it's completely free and it just doesn't take much. And I mean, one of the most powerful things to regulate the nervous system is our breath, which is completely free and very quick and easy. And so just having a bit of awareness around that, um, that helps. It's like it helps so much. So I think being able to bring in some of these tools, to at least provide the information awareness around them, and for medical professionals, healthcare professionals to be able to incorporate and not just default to, here's a pill, here's a surgery, here's a really intense diagnosis that maybe isn't actually true. And so that kind of next level of treating more chronic issues, if anything, maybe a split we need to see of, okay, well, medicine as it is fantastic with acute issues, but do we need to really find a better solution and education around more chronic conditions, which obviously takes time and acceptance, and it's a very long process. But in the meantime, I think taking the initiative, which can be challenging when there's time constraints, but it doesn't take too long to do some research into some of these themes, understand some basic tools that can be helpful, and kind of, again, being the CEO of our health, not necessarily taking one doctor's diagnosis as that, okay, that's it now, that's the only truth. I think that's a really key key piece, which I think it's nice to be able to just believe that someone, okay, well, that's just how it is. But having the sort of stubbornness or the tenacity, I guess, to be able to keep researching and figuring things out.
Yeah, you're taking a more of a approach of becoming a partner with your doctor and your healthcare providers, where you have the awareness of the self. Because the more aware you are of yourself, the more you can bring more information to the providers and their expertise of how they can help you with and educating you. And not everybody has the time or space on their healing journey to go down in a rabbit hole like you have or like I have. And that's why you go to people who have created programs like this. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it by yourself. And there's so many new tools coming out. Like I love neurofeedback. I love the capacity and the potential for even just plant medicine, MDMA therapies in psychedelic assisted therapies for certain people, not everybody. I love that you're doing the gut brain. That's so big. And I love to see all these different aspects for just using the nervous system tools. Like there's a lot of different types of technologies now that you can use to down regulate, like PEMF therapy and just so much red light therapy. Like you said, there's so many infrared heat, infrared saunas. There's a lot. And I think that's why I would say to the audience to connect with Lucy and Reprecision Health. It's because there are so many. So when you're trying to research and you're already overstimulated, you're going to overstimulate yourself more. And, you know,
Definitely, yes, and it's endless, and there's conflicting opinions, and I mean, we don't claim that everything we do is the way either. But yeah, we do provide a lot of free resources on our website, which hopefully are helpful just to get an idea of certain modalities that can be helpful. If it's possible to attend a program, amazing. We have an online program too, which is much lower cost and accessible from anywhere. But yeah, I think also going towards people who are more literate in the nervous system. If your doctor isn't giving you the answers you want to hear, then there is the option to switch. Obviously, functional medicine, integrative medicine, they tend to have more options. They can also be more expensive, but if the option's there, then they'll a bit more aware of these themes and can potentially do a better job of directing. But yeah, the great news is that a lot of this information is becoming freely available mainstream. There's some really great educators out there, so there's definitely options. And yeah, if any questions come our way, we're happy to answer them too, if we can be helpful outside of our programs.
we'll put all of your information as well in the show notes so people can have easy access links to your Absolute to contact you and get all those resources. So my last question, I'm kind of curious if we were listening and we're like, okay, I'm definitely burned out or I'm moving into that space. Are there any simple, actionable burnout busters, if you want to say, that employees or leaders can implement today that could help support their well-being and productivity?
I wish there was like the pill or the gadget or something that just makes it disappear. But I think I alluded to it before that breath can be really, really powerful. And I love it because it's free, constantly accessible. Like I would say almost everybody in the world can do it. And so the reason it's really impactful is because it's one of the few things that connects the conscious mind to the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic in the name, it means that it's just automatically happening in the background. So your heartbeat, your breath, a lot of your metabolic functions, they happen without you having to consciously think about them. But with the breath, we actually can control it. And what's cool is that the inhale is linked to the sympathetic branch and the exhale is linked to the parasympathetic branch. And sympathetics are our stress response, the activation response, and parasympathetic is our like recovery, more down-regulated response. And so you've probably already done this without even realizing it, but often when we're just like relaxing, we'll do that nice sigh, like, you're on the sun lounge or the sofa, you get into bed, you're like, ah. And then the opposite is true with the sympathetic. When we get a fright, the first thing we do is like gasp, and because we're ready, we're activated. So we can kind of simulate this to our advantage and just extend the exhale. So simple. And the thing is, it's just the more you do it, it's just this constant cue to the body of safety. And it's just amazing how much like this little thing can make such a big difference. And so I try to be very mindful of this and do it, especially before eating. Getting into that parasympathetic state is going to really help you digest and absorb your nutrients. So you're not running, just grabbing your snack or at your desk or in the car, that you can just take those deep breaths. And it is easy as just inhaling for 2 counts and exhaling for around 4 counts. You don't need to force it or anything, just like a slightly elongated exhale and being able to kind of like let go a bit. And you maybe also like thinking about like, I'm safe, everything's okay, even if it's a bit crazy. Like you can just be like, I'm okay in this moment right now, like I'm okay. And you can do that before you start your day. I mean, amazing right before you go to sleep. A great time to do it is in the car in a traffic jam when you want to be really stressed and angry. Can you just like focus on exhaling when you're waiting in a line at the grocery store? Anyway, even more powerful if you're able to do it right before you feel like you're going to lose it. You're like getting to that like really stressed out point. You're having a really difficult conversation, or like your kid's about to drive you crazy, and you can just exhale. It's amazing. It just like builds in that pause. It can
Yes.
shift you from reaction to response. And it can just be really, really powerful. So yeah, I mean, it's free and easy. It's just requires some mindfulness to keep doing it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a practice, like you said. My son is turning 18, and I'm always reminding him, just breathe, just breathe. I have a friend who has a daughter who's she's lower functioning autism spectrum, and he's taught her that, just take a breath. And she does it. She goes, and she's so cute when she does it. And I go to my son and say, if she can do this and she's 6, I want to see you start practicing it. Look how much. And he goes, okay. Because it really does. And I think I think for those who might be in that overdrive, I think that may seem too simple. The brain does not want to accept the simplicity, but it really does.
Yeah, it's not a fancy gadget. And the other thing is, I think often we look for passive things. I'll just take the pill, or I'll just put the thing on my head, or I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's active participation is usually more
Yeah.
effective.
Well, I have 2 final questions for you that we ask everyone who comes on the show for the first time.
Yeah.
Our first question is, what is your current favorite product, wellness topic, or self-care indulgence at this time?
Good question. I have a lot of them, a lot of things. I love focusing on them, but something I've been really enjoying lately is actually a balance board, which I have next to me. And it's so amazing because it's like, so proprioception is when your body knows like where your limbs are in space. And so something like a balance board is like amazing for that, for your brain, because you're like, oh, going in all directions. And it's also working so many different muscles like your abs and glutes and all of your legs. So it's such a great thing to do after sitting on the computer, working, and then just jump. And it's also fun. It's like, it's not just like, oh, I'll just go walk on a treadmill. It's like really fun to try and keep balancing on it. So it's something I've been enjoying. And it was actually one of our staff members who's a skin boarder brought one to our property, and that's why I started. And now I have my own, because it was such a great little exercise to go and do. So highly recommend the balance board. And yeah, outside there's all sorts. I mean, I feel like it's like my favorite thing in the world is all of the things you just said, looking
Yeah.
into all these different options.
Wonderful. Now, the final question I have for you, Lucy, is if you could detox one thing in your life or the world right now, what would it be?
I think there's many things that could be detoxed. Something that really caught my attention, I mean, it's been in my attention for a long time, but it was peaked lately, is microplastics. I mean, it's a bit doomy and gloomy when we're looking into it, but there's some pretty intense new studies out of just where we're finding these plastics. I mean, we already knew from placenta to the Arctic, they're just everywhere. But I've been doing a lot of, because of personal reasons of my family, research into dementia, and just looking at how plastics accumulating in the brain can affect that, and there's much higher likelihood of dementia. And so, yeah, looking into these different tools to detox, it's something that's quite hard to detox, but obviously the more
Yeah.
we can improve our detoxification pathways and reduce exposure to them, yeah, that's been a big focus. So I would love to detox the whole planet of microplastics if I could.
I love that you just said that. That's actually where my focus is more recently. It's so
Oh,
funny because I started a couple supplements for and other protocols for it, but because I still struggle with estrogen issues, and
right.
plastics can really, they
Yeah,
can influence.
disruptors.
And yeah, so like I was still struggling with, like, I'm as almost a 40-year-old woman now, I'm only still struggling with acne. And I
Mm,
know that, my journey is, I have the genetic mutation that affects my detox pathways, so it's even
right.
more important
Yeah.
for that. So yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff, but it is, there's always so much more to learn, right? And
Yeah.
I think that if we have our main focus, our main purpose, and what we're doing here in the world, and we can focus on what it is that we want to release and continue to release, whatever that is, whether it's mental, physical, chemical,
Yeah.
that's our journey. That's part of the create and dissolve, create and release, surrender, in this
Yes.
path of life. So
And just remembering how impactful our thoughts are around it. There was a cool study I'll have to find of just how the placebo effect or nocebo effect could actually be more stronger than genetic mutations. So also trying not to live in this state of fear. I'm reading all of these crazy statistics and studies around microplastics. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't want to breathe. I don't want to like be around dust. I don't want to, eat anything out of plastic. But also remembering just how much our thoughts then influence everything in our body. And yeah, living in a fear state is just going to add to your stress and more the nervous system dysregulation and affect all of your detoxification pathways even more. So
oh my gosh, yeah. And we have a neuroscientist that's coming up on the show for some episodes here. So that will be also talked about for everybody to go into,
yeah.
because that's so important. People do dive down this rabbit hole and go, "Oh my gosh, everything's toxic."
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Can't do
just
anything.
it's okay. It's fine. Just relax, it's really going to be fine. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share with us that as far as information for what you're up to in your organization right now?
I think we covered quite a lot. I mean, we've always got more exciting projects coming. A big deep dive in the future is actually going to be into dementia. I kind of alluded to that. And we have our foundation too. We've been working with frontline workers to provide scholarships and free programs as much as we can. So we actually do have some offers coming up in October for frontline workers. We try to give away as many programs as possible. And yeah, we'll put all of our news and updates on the website. And like I mentioned, there's some resources on there that might be helpful for the listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Lucy, for the work you're doing. And again, all of you, this information is valuable. You will see how it infiltrates everything. Your nervous system is so needed. It's just wants your love. It wants to feel safe. And there are many ways to do it. So reach out to us if you have questions about this episode. Reach out to Lucy, connect with her on the socials and through the website. And again, we appreciate you being here.
Oh, lovely to be here. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Be well until next time, my friends. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.